Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine, Locked On Syracuse time. What's more likely? Football edition. We did basketball yesterday, football today. It's on Locked On Syracuse. It is right now.
Are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Matt Bonaparte, Owen Valentine with you on Locked On Syracuse. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get those podcasts that you listen to. We're talking what's more likely in the realm of Syracuse football. Yesterday we were talking Chris Bunch, Justin Taylor, Jimmy B. Now we're talking Sean Tucker, Garrett Schrader, Dino B. So let's get right into it, Mr. Owen. First one for you. Is Syracuse's defense ranked higher than 80th, or Syracuse's offense ranked higher than 80th? Last year, Syracuse's defense was ranked 65th, best, tied for best under the Dino Babers era, which was 2018, the other time they did that. And then last year, Syracuse's offense was ranked 92nd in the country. Obviously, not even close to as good as they were as in that 2018 season. They were ranked 11th in the country, which even staggered me when I read that. Totally forgot about that.
Yeah. I mean, that no one's touching 11th right now, at least with these pieces. Maybe a couple years from now, you could bring some stuff in. But I think when we look at 80th and 80th, it's a tough one for me. I almost want to say both, but I'm going to go with the offense because they went 92nd last year, and I mean, they struggled, especially in the air. Thankfully, Sean Tucker was able to salvage a lot in terms of the running game and get that number up a little bit. But I do think with some new looks, some new an air raid offense could be a picture that's put in here, a little bit more passing to sort of workload Sean Tucker a little bit, load management a little bit, keep him a little bit more efficient. I think that's going to help the offense flow a lot more. And I don't think a 12 spot jump from last year's struggles is too difficult. And I don't think that's too far out of the picture. Whereas I think the defense might struggle to put up some numbers like they did last year or have a little bit of the same effectiveness that they might have last year. So I'm going to go with the offense just because I think I look at perspective and I see 92 last year with all the complaints that I had mentally with the offense. And there have been some fixes. So I think they can make that 12 spot jump and finish above 80th.
Yeah, this is tough. Definitely a tough one. I think that Syracuse over time, I think the offense has been worse than defense in Baber's tenure. I think that he's just struggled more on the offensive side of the ball. But like you say, it could be all different now. I mean, this is another third coordinator that Dino brings in and Robert and I. So is it different? Yeah, it's going to be different, but it's going to be Schrader passing the ball in a different way and possibly even more, which I don't think a lot of people realize because I didn't when I went to ACC kickoff and Schrader basically said, yeah, we're kind of running an air raid offense here. Like, what? Huh? And then, today at the press conference, Sean Tucker says, yeah, they're going to pass the ball more, and I'm excited about it. So who knows? I still think the defense is going to be ranked higher than 80th, though. I'm going defense here, mostly because I like the veteran leadership on the defense more than I do on the offense right now. I just really like Michael Jones. I think that linebacking core is arguably the best in the ACC, maybe outside of NC State, who has Peyton Wilson and Drake Thomas, who are both elite. But yeah, I mean, the corners too and the safeties, the secondary is so good. You have Deuce and Garrett, who we're going to get to a little bit later. Then you also have, Jason Simmons back there and Jihad Carter and so many really good, talented backs. The defensive line is where it gets a little, skeptical because it's Caleb Okacheku, Steve Linton, and Terry Lockett, who, as Dino Babers told me once, used to be young dogs running around bashing into things in the house, but are now guys who look at you cross-eyed when you walk in the house, whatever that means. I'm going to go defense regardless, and I'm going to say that they finish maybe 70th.
I don't hate either option here. I won't lie. I'm going to side with offense. I like that. I've got to give a shout out before I forget to Matthew Bergeron because I've seen him getting shouts on Twitter all day and I think it's only right that we give him a little bit of credit on here. He started to turn some heads early season. Maybe people are realizing he was flying a little bit under the radar. I know Jim Nagy tweeted out about how he was sort of under the radar. Babers talked about him in the press conference yesterday. And I think there was one more where I saw him make like an ACC top 5, getting a little bit of recognition. I like what he's doing. I think the offensive line can make a little bit of a jump this year to improve, give a little bit more protection. And I think when you look at what Robert and I can do as an offensive coordinator, I think if you put someone in motion here and there, if you throw to a tight end, like
Yeah.
little simple things that really
You
just
pull a
weren't
guard.
even
Yeah.
considered last year. Yeah. I think that's something that can really help make a little bit of a jump. And as I was saying, a 12-spot jump compared to what really wasn't happening last year, I do not think is too hard to pull off. And at the same thing, I think the defense can operate at a clip that's top 80 as well. I might go and say I'm not picking, and I know that's the opposite of this game, and just say both will finish top 80 and see how my cards play out.
That'd be crazy. I would love that. All right. Next one. Does this offense have 15 receiving touchdowns or 35 rushing touchdowns? Last year, Syracuse had 10 receiving touchdowns and 28 rushing touchdowns.
I said rushing touchdowns when we were planning these. I'm going to audible here.
Wow.
Yeah, I just talked about the offense. I'm going to stay talking about the offense in terms of the passing can help. I'm going to 15 receiving touchdowns. I think if you can tell me that they, as a unit, that these receivers get 5 more receiving touchdowns than last season, I don't think that's absurd given what was happening. I think you can start to see these guys getting those reps. As we said, we're going to repeat it now because I love the fact that we're coming to the realization that Garrett Schrader called this a air raid offense. So they're going to throw the ball. They're going to look to pass. Sean Tucker today said that they're going to start to really pass the ball more. And I think that includes Sean Tucker getting a couple more reps, screen passes, quick outs, things of that nature. I think it's going to get them that bump that they need to get to 15 receiving touchdowns, which is not by any means anything, extraordinary. But I do think this year, with a little bit more confidence in Schrader starting to figure some things out a little bit. The new offensive look, the new schemes, being able to mix some new looks in there with, a core that comes back for a decent amount of things offensively, right? You're bringing back a lot of the main pieces. I think Dino also said today that if Schrader and Sean Tucker are the only two that make big plays, then he's fine with that. I think other people are going to find their time. Other people are going to get their spots. And I think that brings the receivers into play here.
Yeah, sure. I think the same thing pretty much. I mean, I think this might be the easiest one on the list. I think you got to hit the 15 receiving touchdowns here. Like you said, because the offense is changing in that direction. And we saw them go through an entire season of pretty much leaning on the rush and teams beating them because they would shut down any passing lane possible and force them to run pretty much. Or the other way was forcing them to pass by neutralizing Tucker, stacking the box, and forcing Schrader to use his arm and watching him throw pick after pick or just terrible read after terrible read and incompletion after incompletion. So if they can kind of structure an offense that plays towards Schrader's Schrader's strengths 5 times fast, that's tough. If they can find an offense that played his strengths in the air, it changes the game, and you definitely hit that 15 number. I will say he only had 9 last year. It was DeVito that had 1.
Yeah, I want to, change this up a little bit. Hypothetically, if this was 15 receiving versus 30 rushing, would that change your answer?
No,
I think
because I think they're going to have
to
less.
be 25.
Yeah, I think they're going to have less rushing touchdowns just because they can't lean on Tucker all year again. I mean, like they don't have the offense for that. So I think it would have to be maybe 25. Yeah, 35 was ambitious, but I'm trying to bump them up. All right, let me read a quick little ad here. If you want to place bets on some lines this year, maybe go to betonline.net. It's the fastest and easiest way to check in on all your betting needs, find all your favorite sports and events with the number one online source for odds, lines, and games. Find reviews and news of every league, including Major League Baseball, NFL, NBA, NHL, combat sports, esports, and even golf. BetOnline continues to be the top online resource for all your sports wagering information, from live in-game betting, scores, and podcasts. They have you covered. Head to BetOnline today or use your mobile device to learn more about the action happening today. BetOnline, where the game starts. Alrighty. It is Matt Bonaparte. It is Owen Valentine here on Locked On Syracuse. We're talking what's more likely for Syracuse football. And here's my favorite one. Syracuse goes positive in ACC play or goes winless in ACC play. Now, before you were screaming, of course it's winless in ACC play, I obviously think that there's a better chance Syracuse is under 500 in ACC play than over 500 in ACC play. I obviously think that. And I think anybody with a brain probably would, because Syracuse has a tough schedule this season. But I don't think they go winless. I think that there's almost no shot that they go winless, because here, I'm going to run you through it right now. You've got Louisville. That is probably the hardest of the winnable games. To start the year and start ACC play, you probably play the hardest of winnable games inside ACC play. They're a good team. They have a good quarterback and some good players, but it's a winnable game inside the JMA Dome for the new freshmen who are going to be acclimated to this program for the first time ever. I don't think Virginia's a win. I don't think NC State or Clemson are wins. But I'll tell you what, I think they have a shot at Pitt. I think they have a shot at FSU. And I think they have a shot at Boston College. Now, that doesn't make them positive. They'd have to beat like Virginia or pull a crazy upset against Clemson. But I don't know, man. Like, this is so tough. What do you think?
I think this is like we're trying to. I just
don't think there's a chance they go winless.
It's like we're trying to take Harvey Dent's Two-Face coin and trying to flip tails here. You just can't get a winner. It's tough. I mean, how are you arguing either one? I think I'm going to say more likely that they go winless, but as you were saying, like it's
got to win one.
Right? It's tough. I mean, I like that, we can take this 4-week stretch from NC State to Pittsburgh with Clemson and Notre Dame in between and just not even look at that for this conversation.
Dude,
but when you do look, you look at Louisville, you look at Virginia, you look at Florida State, Wake Forest, BC, they're winnable.
Even when they went 1-10, they won a conference game. Like,
yeah, that was a bad Duke, though, wasn't it?
No, it was Georgia Tech. It's a good game.
Oh,
Tommy DeVito carved up Georgia Tech.
Oh man, you're right. Well, they don't have Georgia Tech this year.
No, that's the problem. But
this is tough. How do you find? I mean,
but to be fair, they won 2 conference games last year, and they didn't really have a cupcake conference game either. I mean, a Virginia Tech team that wasn't great, that they kind of battled it out with, and then that Boston College victory that some people could contend should have been a loss. I mean, outside of that 4-minute stretch in which they scored 21 points. But hey, shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah, this is.
I don't know. It's hard to make a decision.
It's a fade them finishing above 500 in ACC play. I think is what it is. They're bad choices. This question's tough. We just said the last one was too easy by 10 rushing touchdowns. Too easy was our last one. And this one's impossible. How are you picking? Neither of them are that likely by any stretch. We were saying this, we were running through before. You're like, Florida State's awful. That's an easy win. But, is that not the same thing that they say down there? The same with all these other teams in the ACC that are looking through their
Florida
schedule.
State is definitely looking at that schedule and being like, Syracuse is a dub. That's a dub.
Yeah. And here we are, arguing through. Yeah, there's one. But one is
I'm staying positive.
Incredibly different than 5 ACC wins.
I'm going to stay positive just because I think there's no way they go winless. I don't think they go winless. I don't think it happens.
When we say positive, is that?
But is it more likely? Yeah,
are you saying 5-3 when you say positive?
No, they can't do. They can't go 5-3. But they're not going to go win. I guess that by default that makes it more likely they will be winless. But I just don't think they'll be winless.
I would even say 500. Switch that word from positive to 500.
And then there's a switch.
I don't know.
If you switch it to 500, I would pick 500. I think.
I think that switches it. Positive is
because then I could find a way to get to 500. I could point at the wins for 500. I could not for positive.
Yeah,
I'm going to say if it's 500, I'm taking that. If not, I'm saying winless. All right, we're moving on. Garrett Williams and Deuce Chestnut combined for 6 INTs, or the linebackers combined for 17 sacks. Now, last year, Syracuse as a team only had 4 interceptions. 3 of those came from Deuce Chestnut. 0 came from Garrett Williams. So Garrett Williams would start having to pull his weight there. And last season, the linebackers combined for 15 sacks. So they'd have to bump that up a little bit. I'm going to go linebackers here. I think this one's cut and dry for me. I think I think Williams and Chestnut could do it. And there's a good chance they do it, but I think that I would bet on the linebackers going over that because I think they're so good and they're only getting better. Like, and Michael Jones had 3 last year. I know he's not necessarily in the backfield guy, but Stephon Thompson and Marlowe Wax are, and I can see them just absolutely obliterating quarterbacks because they're kind of in need because the defensive line isn't going to be what it was last season. So you're going to need those linebackers to show up.
I like your take. I have a little bit more faith in Garrett Williams and Deuce Chestnut. You said it. If you're 4 interceptions as a team last year, 3 of them from Deuce, I will give them a little bit more credit, right? We say Garrett Williams gets no interceptions last year. He had 10 pass breakups. Give him a little bit of a redeeming stat there. Don't just completely torch him.
He had 9,
6 is was it 9?
Yep.
Did I read wrong? Can I not read a
but
9 versus 10?
18 over 2 years, which I think is one of the best in the ACC of active players. So he has been incredible.
It's 10. I'm sticking by it.
Okay.
Unless I'm reading the stat wrong. It was a 9? Either way, I think we stick with that. I'll stick with my point here. I think they are going to grow, especially too. You've seen the jumps and start to see what they can figure out from year 1 to year 2. These aren't quite your big dogs that are figuring it out now that they're, they haven't quite figured out how to stop running into things and bumping around, and now they're calm and going to be like that analogy. But these are maybe show dogs that are starting to be trained and really starting to figure out that finesse. When you look at what they're pulling off, I think they're both going to continue to grow, continue to improve. And I think that can come with 6 interceptions between the two of them. I mean, Deuce Chestnut did his part last year. I think he can pick the ball off 3 times a piece between these two. When you look at these guys, when you look at these names, you're so excited to see them, come back and continue to run that spot and, be the defensive dogs that they are, really. And, break pass breakups, whatever, just get in people's face. Don't even get the ball thrown at you, whatever it may be. They're doing well. I think they're going to make that final little jump. I like hearing what I'm hearing about Garrett Williams early on in the season, the leader he's become. Dino Babers says he doesn't know what makes a leader, but he knows what makes a cake. That was a quote from today. Garrett Williams is a leader. I think with Deuce Chestnut by his side that they're going to pull this one off. I'll roll with the 6 interceptions. Once again, not a knock at the linebackers on this one. I think you bring up a lot of great points about their experience as well. I'm just going to go with the 6. I'm a big interception fan. Not that I have anything against sacks, but I do, prefer the turnovers here, so I'll roll with them.
Okay. Audio listeners, you're going to hear an ad right now. Video listeners, good for you. You're staying with us. I think this is also one of my favorite ones on the list. Justin Lamson starts a game for Syracuse in the future, or Carlos Del Rio Wilson, yes, starts 3. I always mix it up. I want to say Williams, but it's Wilson. Starts 3 seasons for Syracuse. This one, okay, let me take you through this. Syracuse currently has 6 quarterbacks on the roster. 5 of them, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, are redshirt freshmen, which is insane. I feel like Luke McPhail has been there for 20 years. I thought Luke McPhail and I got to Syracuse at the same time. Somehow, he's a redshirt freshman. So you got Luke McPhail's a redshirt freshman, Carlos Del Rio is a redshirt freshman, then Morgan, Villari, Lamson, they're all redshirt freshmen. As we all know, the recent news on Lamson is that he is out for the year. That was today's news. If you're listening this Wednesday morning, it's yesterday's news. Babers said in the press conference he ain't playing this year. So the question basically is, because, you've heard this hype about Lamson, right? In the spring, he played incredibly well. Everyone was like, oh, this kid actually can play. We haven't seen him play very much. Morgan's the only guy we've seen play in the 1 in 10 year. So Is it going to be Lamson or is it going to be Carlos Del Rio Wilson that plays? And the other fold in the Carlos Del Rio Wilson one is he'd have to outplay Schrader because Schrader is the quarterback next year on paper, right? So he'd have to uproot Schrader's job next season, which I don't see happening. So I'm taking Lamson.
Okay, so you're going process of elimination here. I'm similar. I like Lamson to start a game. I think we bring up last spring or this spring, technically still 2022. You bring up the spring and sort of seeing what he did in the spring game. I think he was like 7 for 10 with 130 and
He's great.
2 touchdowns or something like that. Really efficient, looked good. And he was getting, I'm pretty sure he was splitting, not completely splitting, but taking a good chunk of first team reps in the spring as well, which was a good sign for what they thought of him, what he was doing on the field, in games, thing like that, or in scrimmages like that. So to see that sort of credit that he's getting was nice. I'm not going to say he's a starter by any means, but I do think, and I'll tip the cap to Brent Axe, who threw out the injury clause today, and I'm going to roll with that because he was talking about how important the backup is for Syracuse given quarterback history and injuries and
True.
not season ending but I'm going to give the Justin Lamson will start a game because someone else isn't, not necessarily because he's won a starting role.
I think that's what I'm going with as well. But not only for injuries, but in the history of Syracuse, I mean, 2018, Tommy DeVito came in and saved Eric Dungy on a couple of accounts. And that's kind of why everybody was like, okay, this kid's the future and we can all trust him. And then obviously that wasn't true. Yeah, the NC State and UNC, he comes in and saves the day both times. So it's a thing. And that was in a quarterback situation where Dungy was unequivocally the starter. Even after those games, I don't think there was a voice out there saying he shouldn't have been. And he goes down in history as one of the greatest leaders in Syracuse football history. And DeVito definitely doesn't. So in Syracuse's quarterback room, in the history, especially under Dino Babers, everybody has to be ready to start. Last year that was evident. Of course, Schrader came in looking for the job and he ended up getting it. DeVito transfers, whatever. But like you said, injuries. Think about Clayton Welch, how he had a game. He had that touchdown down the sideline to Taj on his first throw.
First play?
First play. Took the snap. I'll never forget that. Took the snap like 97 yards. Bang! I was like, oh!
Perfect QBR.
Yeah, and then I don't think he played very well after that. But Clayton, good player for that one play. But anyway, I'm going to take Lamson as well. Okay, let's move on. Sean Tucker goes for 1,800 scrimmage yards, or Garrett Schrader rushes for 15 tutters. Sean Tucker had 1,751 yards last season. Schrader had 14 rushing touchdowns. I think I'm going to go Tucker scrimmage yards because he's going to get more receptions this season per se. Because what is Syracuse? Their offense is get the ball into that Sean Tucker man's hands and let him do whatever he wants with it. That's how they score points. So I think that's going to take away from Schrader rushing touchdown opportunities and give a lot to Sean Tucker reception opportunities, which means he's going to have a lot more receiving yards. I don't think the rushing yards are going to deplete that much for Tucker. I don't think you're going to get nearly 1,500 out of him again, maybe 1,300 if he's lucky. But scrimmage yards, I'm going to go Tucker here.
I like your rationale a lot. I was thinking the same thing. Schrader to get to 15 rushing touchdowns is a huge ask, especially with, the increase in passing that has been talked about, that we've talked about 2-3 times throughout. I mean, this episode alone here, I like Sean Tucker getting to 1,800. Neither of these are, incredibly realistic to happen as a guarantee or to even be, close to favorites in terms of yes, no, if you were to put a betting line on that. But I think Tucker going for 1,800 is the more feasible of these two, as you were saying. When it comes to increases in passing, that's going to come to an increase in Sean Tucker getting some dishes out there, some quick little touches, easy touches, end around, anything you want to do. I guess not end around, but getting these little screen passes, quick outs, anything that you can do to get him the ball in a different capacity. Let him use his talents. Let him use, everything he can do running the ball in a completely different look. I think that's going to get him a bump in receiving yards. He went, 250 in terms of receiving yards last year?
Something like that.
I think he can, maybe.
He can get that number to 500.
Is it bold to say he can double that?
I don't think it's bold. I think he could
Yeah, I think he
absolutely
can
double that.
double that. I think he
Think
get
of
to
the
500
Albany
receiving
game,
yards.
dude. That
Yeah,
Albany game where he just toasted everybody uh, and put on the burners every time he had the football in his hand. He was fantastic in that game. I think he broke the whatever the record was for combined rushing and receiving yards by a Syracuse player. He had 121 receiving yards in that game. I mean, that's
yeah.
insane. So if he can
I
do
do
anything
like the
close
double
to
there.
that,
He can
like,
more than double. I'm looking at
yeah,
numbers here. I mean, he was what 1.8 ish in terms of receptions per game or
something
on the
like that.
receiving
Yeah.
end. Yeah, so I
Yeah.
mean,
He
to
had
get the
20
ball into
receptions
his
on the year.
hands twice a game, three times a game, more efficiently, even more than three times a game, I think you can see those numbers bump. Uh, and that, as you were saying, makes up for, the fact that odds are he doesn't break the rushing record again this year or get to
Yeah.
1550. And, that way he drops to, drop 250, get down to 1300, 1200. You can pull it off ish in terms of the receiving that, or the receptions and the receiving yards that he'll be able to get. I like that. I think that's our take here. I agree with you on this one for sure.
Okay, last one. Are three quarterbacks featured on the field this season, or are four running backs? Not at the same time, just at any point. Do you get a total of three quarterbacks during the year or four running backs during the year? That means, for me, I think that probably means maybe at some point Danny Villari comes on for some weird Taysom Hill uh, set, and there that you get two right there, and then maybe you get Carlos Del Rio Wilson late in the game, or somebody gets hurt or something, and we see someone like that. And then the four running backs would have to be LaQuint Allen. I mean, you have a lot of young running backs this year, right? So you could have a guy like Mario Escobar. Jawan Price has been talked about a bit. Dino talked about him at ACC kickoff. Uh, yeah, I mean, Josh Escobar, perhaps Mario and Josh. Look at that, they're brothers. And then David Obeng Agyapong, he exists too. So maybe you get four of those. I'm going to go quarterbacks, though. I just think it's more feasible.
Can we count like the one fun Chris Elmore rush, even though he's from a
Sure.
fullback as a
We'll
running
count
back?
that. He's an
Uh,
offensive lineman, tight end, fullback. We'll count
right?
him.
How generous are we? Can like Courtney Jackson end around count as half a
Is
running back?
Devon Cooper a running back? No.
I don't know how you get four running backs mixed in there, even with the Elmore loophole.
Well, the thing
Uh,
is, like last year, I think it happened because you had
yeah,
like Abdul Adams, Jarvion Howard came back. Then you had Cooper Lutz in there. There were so many different guys who ran the ball last year. And then this year you have so many freshmen. So it's going to be kind of like a scramble to see who's going to be the best freshman, perhaps. But I don't know.
you know, let's actually mix it. I'll say four running backs,
Okay.
more
I
likely.
think it's possible.
I think the Dan Villari loophole is a tight end. Like you keep saying it, and I can't cross it off the list of feasibility. And now I know it's going to happen, and you're going to go nuts. So you're going to loophole your way into that. I'm going to say four running backs.
All right.
I think there's enough times where naturally you need to go to running back two.
Cool.
And as running backs take hits, I'm a Seattle Seahawks fan. I feel no one goes through running backs like Seattle. You
It's
just
true.
take hit after hit.
Chris
And it's
Carson just
because of
retired.
it's a struggling offensive line. Syracuse's O-line, a little bit better this year, but still not, immaculate by any means. Running backs take hits unless you're Sean Tucker. I think that gives you the easy three. And then four can happen at some point. I'll go with four running backs. But I
All
do
right.
think both could happen. Very much so, especially when, the tight end loophole comes in.
I respect it. Well, that does it for us today. Thank you for making Locked On Syracuse your first listen today. Go get more on the ACC by making Locked On ACC your second listen every day. Candace Cooper and the local experts of Locked On take you across the ACC in 30 minutes. Make Locked On ACC your second listen. That's Locked On ACC. We'll be back tomorrow. I think Brad makes his return. And then on Friday's episode, you should be very excited because we've got JP Estrella coming back on the show. He'll be on his Syracuse visit when we record, so we'll get the lowdown on that. We'll ask him about the cancellation of the Duke trip, and I'll tell him to go to my favorite deli in Syracuse. We will see you then. Peace.